about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Hello.
What's up, Denise Simon? It's your buddy Don.
Hi, Don.
So, I have no idea what we're going to talk about tonight because today I have been slammed. I haven't been on social media. I haven't checked out Drudge. I haven't checked out the AP. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but that's why I've called you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's Drive Time Sit Rep with Denise Simon. My name's Don Neuen. I'm in my car driving home. Denise is going to timestamp this show in a minute to let you know exactly when this conversation took place. Denise, let's get after it because I guarantee you there's a bunch we can talk about.
Oh, okay. Well, it is 8:42 p.m. Eastern on the 19th day of August. Summer's almost over. In the year of our Lord, 2019.
Thank you. And where do we go from here? What do you want to start talking about?
Well, we have a 21-page last will and testament of one Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this last will and testament was filed on August the 15th of 2019 in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. That is where he is claiming to be a resident and domiciled. All right. And he has designated two executors, a Darren Indike and a Richard Kahn. Attached to or as part of the last will and testament are the notary signatures, because those two men had a statement that they signed in front of a notary accepting the task of being the executors of the last will and testament. And I'm scrolling down here, which they signed, which is called Oath of Willingness to Serve. And they both signed it on August the 15th in front of a notary.
All right, stop right there. Let me ask you a question to help put some timelines into perspective. When was he arrested, and when did he die?
The last will and testament was done and filed 2 days before he hung himself. Successfully hung himself.
Wait a minute. What's the date today?
The 19th.
Of August.
Right.
But this was done on the 15th.
Well, it was filed on the 15th. It was the signatures were approved by the notary on the 15th, and it was filed on the 15th in St. Thomas.
Is there a date in which this actually was drafted?
No. It looks like it's a pretty extensive template, if you understand what I'm saying. Except when you get down to the values of the personal property, which into itself is quite remarkable.
All right, before you get into the nuts and bolts of this thing, though, how do you know that this was done 2 days before he hung himself?
because that's when the officials in St. Thomas received it.
Okay, so there is that date.
Correct. And
All
the
right,
date
and
that it was signed off by the notary. So it all happened in one fell swoop on the 15th. Now, when this document was created with Jeffrey Epstein's name on it and the value of his personal property, we do not know. I mean, it could have been done 5 years ago, could have been done a month ago, it could have been done a week ago. We don't know.
all right, what is the date that it was received down in the Virgin Islands?
The 15th.
So, okay, now I'm confused. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in the car, so I don't have any way of being able to look at this along with Denise. You told me that the Virgin Islands received this 2 days before he hung himself.
What the news reports are saying that he filed his, let's see, let me see when he killed himself.
Because the only date I keep hearing is the 15th, which is like a week after he hung himself.
Hung himself. Has it been a week already?
He hung himself last Saturday.
Okay. So last Saturday, hold on, last Saturday was the 17th. 3 days ago?
No.
Or are you talking the 10th? A week ago, the 10th. Okay.
That's why none of this is making any sense to me yet, driving in a car.
Well, it can. As I said, he could in fact have already done all of this, but it went through the signature process and the filing process after, first of all, it went from him to his lawyer, and then his lawyer had to take through the process on the 15th.
Okay. All right. Well, clearly there are greater minds dealing with this than mine. So let's move past it to the meat and potatoes of what was in this.
Well, what he has done is he has set this up into a trust. And the only relative that he has, direct relative that he has, is an estranged brother. And the brother, under law, would typically be the beneficiary if there weren't all these other things that are in it. And there are things in it. Including, I might add, several lawsuits that have already been filed attaching, an estimated dollar amount to the estate. So it is in a trust. It is out of St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. And when anybody gets any money, it could be years, because, it's going to have to go through probate and all this other kind of nonsense, including, I might add, appraisal values, because they're going to have to bring in, I would say, fine arts and collectibles and antiques type people to put appraisals to his trinkets inventory. But he had $194 million sitting in an equity investment fund. He's got $56 million in cash, $14 million in other investment funds, $112 million in equities, $18 million in aviation assets, including boats and automobiles. He has 10,000 shares of Maple Incorporated, which apparently is a U.S. Virgin Island corporation, which holds title to a building in New York on 9 East 71st Street, which is valued at $56 million. There's 10,000 shares of yet another one. I guess these are his real estate properties in New York, Stanley, New Mexico, Palm Beach, his condo, if you will, in Paris. Another, obviously, place in the Great St. James Island. another place in Nautilus, which is another part of Little St. James. And you got Great St. James Island and Little St. James Island. And so the value without the appraisal of all the other fine arts, if you will, is $577 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's where you go. Now, the only other person he names in here is his brother, Mark Epstein, who will get 100% of the share of essentially what is left, because, I mean, he's got bills to pay. He even says in here that the executors are to pay out, whatever is outstanding bills, attorney's fees, all these other kinds of things. I mean, it's quite the document. But it has to go into probate. He's not signed any kind of a waiver, including, I would say, a bond. So he it did all this. Interestingly enough, this was signed by William Bloom, Esquire. Apparently, what is known as the Keller Halls, Ferguson and Crobland PPLC, Royal Palms Professional Building, St. Thomas. The lawyer in the Virgin Islands, dated August the 15th, 2019.
Any relation to Lisa Bloom?
No.
Okay.
Although she has put $100 million claim on it because she apparently is representing some women. She's one of those. So, it's really quite curious that, this is done a couple of days ago. And, all these people have signed this thing. Now, I don't know how complicated it gets because it was signed in essentially U.S. territory. But, normally when you do a will, Jeffrey Epstein, being of sound mind and body, that little phrase, being of sound mind and body, ain't in here that I can see. And even if it was, that would be contested because obviously he wasn't.
Right.
There is a death certificate in here. Immediate cause of death is listed as pending further study. Jeffrey Edward Epstein. So birthplace, Brooklyn, New York. Informant's name is Mark Epstein, who I guess had to go down and handle the death certificate. What do we know
about Mark Epstein?
Really nothing, except that they really didn't have too much to do with each other. But he's under, obviously some obligation because he's the only name of kin.
That in itself is kind of bizarre, don't you think?
Well, yeah, but it is what it is. And in the meantime, an interesting thing came out today because the New York Post got it, I think, from the Daily Mail, but there's actually a video, which I happened to see, where Prince Andrew is at the New York property waving goodbye, opens the door and barely has the door open, but he's waving goodbye to a girl who is leaving. And this was after Epstein walks out with another girl as they were already leaving. And it must be cold because Epstein is in a jacket and she's just in a long sleeve shirt. So Prince Andrew says he's appalled that any of this is going on, but yet here's the video. He's waving goodbye to some girl like, toodaloo, I'll see you later.
It's way too early to speculate on this, clearly, where this is all going to fall and who's going to be, who's going to have their dirty laundry aired over all of this. So let's try to stay away from that. And I know you'll appreciate me not asking you to speculate on that. Mm-hmm. But I would like you to speculate on his death. Because the last week when we had our SITREP and throughout the week and the previous weekend of the 10th, I know that you and Tom Del Beccaro were somewhat in agreement that you believed that he was actually poisoned and that this was quite possibly provided to him by one of his lawyers. Do you still feel that way, given that we're 10 days later or a week late, week and a half later?
The autopsy allegedly is complete, but the autopsy has not been released. The woman who performed the autopsy was not in a position to make a confirmed declaration of death by hanging suicide. Although her boss apparently had made that declaration, but he doesn't sign it. No. Bodden was only brought in to observe, nothing more.
Has he said anything?
No.
Okay.
So, I believe there is certainly a method of suicide. I do obviously believe that there was some suicide. I don't believe somebody killed him. And I'll tell you why I don't believe somebody killed him. Why wait? This whole case with Epstein was brought to light after the tireless work of several investigative journalists out of the Miami Herald. And they even did a documentary. And this was done 4 or 5 months ago because I watched the documentary. I even wrote about it on my website. And so there was plenty of opportunity between the time that this investigation was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. He clearly knew about it. And then the summary and then the documentary for somebody to kill him. He was vacationing in Paris, had flown back from Paris, landed in Teterboro, and at that moment he was arrested. So any time prior to Teterboro, any of those people that wanted him dead had plenty of opportunity. That's why I believe that nobody killed him. Could it have been by hanging? Well, everybody's saying yes, that's what it was. The jury's still out in my world. Do I believe that he wanted to go? Yes, I do. He knew that once he was arrested, he would never see another free day in his life. Ever.
Right. I'm going to throw a few things at you. Are you able to substantiate the following? In that prison that he was kept in, or the jail, are the sheets made out of paper?
Those that are in the special housing unit that give a cause for sheets to be made out of paper to be provided to specific inmates, the answer to that is yes.
Okay. Do we know whether or not his sheets were paper sheets or like a cotton sheet?
Officially, we do not know that.
Okay. What about the bone that was broken in his throat that everybody's been speculating and talking about all weekend long?
Mm-hmm. What about it?
What is it? The hyoid?
Hyoid.
Hyoid. All right. What do we know about that? And is this all speculation that's coming out of the media?
I believe it's still speculation because, I think it's coming from somebody like the New York Times or the Washington Post. But we have not seen the test results which could and should be attached to the autopsy.
All right. So let's move away from that speculating and the discussion of his death. And can we go back to this last will and testament?
Mm-hmm.
What do you find most troubling about that? Because before we went to air, you didn't seem like you were in a very good mood.
I don't really find anything that would raise my eyebrow in this last will and testament at all. The one thing I looked for was the text of Jeffrey Epstein being a sound mind and body, and that wasn't in there. So I can't whine about that one, because if that had been there, you could automatically contest it. Especially if this cat was in the special housing unit, or as he was in the special housing unit, had allegedly attempted suicide once. And because of that, they are required, you have some psychologist or psychiatrist that's supposed to visit them every single day. We haven't seen any of those reports either.
Right.
So I'm okay with the last will and testament. I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to start attaching claims to his estate. And some I would say perhaps rightly so. Others I would challenge maybe not. And do I think that any of these monies are going to be paid out anytime soon? I wouldn't say. It would take every bit of 5 years before anybody sees a dime.
Yeah. Yeah. Which sucks.
Well, look, I think you and I discussed this before. How many of these girls went there willingly, regardless of age?
Yeah, we did discuss it. I think we discussed it last week.
Correct. And so where does that really put them? Are they, were they doing this because of greed? Were they doing this because of fame? Were they doing this because of false promises? Or were they doing this and kept going back, at which they were willing accomplices in all of this? So each girl, and we don't know how many, we don't know if it's 10 or 3,000, but each girl, their case is going to be unique. So we have the Secret Service files, we have the pilot logs, we have the boat captain logs, we have the FBI interviews that we haven't even really brought into this whole thing yet.
Right.
So there's, I would say that what we know is kind of like a deck chair off the Titanic here at this point.
All right. We got about 2 minutes before we need to go to break. When we get back, I want to get your thoughts on this woman, Maxwell. You know, I saw last week that she was spotted at an In-N-Out burger in Southern California.
Right.
And I want to get in. I don't know how much you're able and want to talk about her, but clearly she has something to do with this. I'm really curious on why she's still romping around at an In-N-Out burger in Southern California.
There's not a warrant out for her.
Yeah, but why not?
Because we haven't gotten to that point of the case yet.
I get that. But
Okay.
Don't you think maybe we need to step that up a little bit? Or she's going to disappear.
That's a rhetorical question, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Drive Time SITREP. They've got Denise Simon on one end of this. My name is Don Neuen. Let me tell you about Denise's website so you can go check it out during the break. FoundersCode.com. FoundersCode.com. That's Denise's personal website. It's where she posts all of her articles. If you put your email address in the little box up at the top page of that website, you will get sent to your inbox a notification and a link so that you can check out every article that Denise ever posts. Now, why would you want to do that? Because she does all the hard work for you. She does all the vetting. That makes it to where you can post and repost and share and use it in discussion with 100% confidence that what you're talking about has been well vetted and is accurate information. You're not going to be spreading around fake news that's been sent to you through some troll in the IRS building or the IRA building in Petersburg, Russia, from some Russian sitting there in his underwear on the third floor of this IRA building, Internet Research Agency. All right, we're going to go on a quick break. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Drive Time SITREP brought to you by Mojo 50. We'll be right back.
Check us
Welcome back to the Drive Time SITREP, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Don Neuen. You've got on the other end of this conversation Denise Simon. Before we went to break, I was asking Denise Simon a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein's gal pal, whatever her name is, Maxwell, who was spotted last week, we think it was last week, at an In-N-Out Burger in Southern California enjoying some type of a burger and milkshake. Now, what do we know about this woman, Denise? And it sounds like she was kind of like a madam for him. Was she not?
Well, she was I would say, the administrative pimp.
Good one. An AP. She's an AP.
Yeah. Now, she did, in fact, have many sexual encounters with Epstein himself. But then I think that she kind of came out of that and became the head of the recruiters, if you will, for the Epstein network of friends. So
kind of a perverted headhunter, right?
Well, precisely.
I had to go there.
I
knew I could get away with it with FCC regulations, so I went there.
Okay. Now, what's particularly interesting is she is the daughter of a disgraced media mogul. Her father was, he's now dead. But anyway.
Isn't that Robert Maxwell?
I think that was his first name. Yeah, Robert Maxwell. And it really gets to be rather fascinating because now not only do we have a component out of Britain, but we also have a component out of France. And so I would imagine that we could, in fact, have some French involvement in all things Miss Maxwell and Epstein. Now, there's a lot of, I would say, skeletons in the closet of the Maxwell clan themselves, including the fact that he had apparently some interaction with Bernie Madoff. Yeah. And I also need to mention here in a little bit of research that one of Epstein's clients in his quasi hedge fund, he hated the fact that somebody called it a hedge fund, was otherwise known as a person by the name of Adnan Khashoggi, who was a very wealthy Saudi that died a couple of years ago. And he is the uncle, by the way, of Jamal, the now dead Jamal Khashoggi.
Correct.
And now, the Khashoggi clan, they were obviously full of their own piles of money. And Khashoggi, he did some pretty shady things himself. And obviously, I would say that Jeffrey Epstein knew a lot of this, including being one of the larger arms traffickers in the world.
Right.
So when we hear some chatter that Epstein was part and parcel a member of the intelligence community,
I knew you were going there. And
that little Miss Ghislaine Maxwell herself is reading a book on CIA heroes at the time she was having her burger.
Yep.
I would say that there's a lot of truth to this. Now, why would that be? It's beyond denial that the CIA has what they call almost kind of corporate assistants. They're kind of like a civilian group of advisors. So when you have CEOs of very large corporations that travel the world and meet with other world leaders, when they come back, they generally are debriefed by someone in the CIA. Now, Carly Fiorina was one such person back when she was at Hewlett Packard. So it's not an unusual thing. So I'm of the notion, because Epstein was very, very involved in big money and just a handful of clients, if you could call them that, with international intrigue, that he had some goods that he had shared with CIA and FBI, which probably was part and parcel of the reason, somewhere between the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office and the Department of Justice at the time, that he got a sweet deal originally. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So
I agree.
Right. So there's, again, we I don't know. I think this could be a 10-week miniseries on HBO by the time this is all necessarily come out and the script is finished. But I don't believe that could happen for at least another 5 years either. But I would also argue that the Secretary of Labor, Alexander Acosta, never should have resigned.
Really? Why do you say that?
Because I believe that the decisions were way above him at the Department of Justice, under some external agency intelligence or external intelligence agency pressures.
And who do you see it leading back to?
I don't know that. I can't know that, because we don't know how long it had been going on. We don't know if it went back just through the Obama administration, or even way prior to that, going back and maybe even as far as Carter or Clinton. We have no idea.
Yeah, but if I'm not mistaken, and you might have to look this up, you may know it off the top of your head, the whole Palm Beach slap on the wrist, that took place under Bush 43, did it not?
Correct.
Okay. So we know that at least that aspect of it took place under 43 and not Obama.
Well, that decision was made, but I would say that any of the work that Epstein had been provided happened prior to the Bush administration.
You don't think he was providing anything during 43's 8 years? He
very well may have, but I'm saying that when Epstein even worked at Bear Stearns, which is no longer around, and the people that he traveled in circles with, and he was actually fired from Bear Stearns, by the way, and we don't know that reason. It seems to be very quiet on why he was fired from Bear Stearns before it went kaput. We don't know how far back this goes.
Well, Charles Ortel, we got him on the Cowboy Logic radio show for tomorrow night. And one of the things he brought up that was a bit puzzling is how the guy became a faculty member at the prestigious school that he did in New York with very little or unsuccessful education.
Oh, he was being educated. He just never finished. But he apparently.
Yeah, but you gotta finish, don't you, in order to become accredited to be able to teach?
Well, apparently he had been at some party or some event that somebody at this school was really quite impressed with him and introduced him to the school. Apparently Epstein himself was really a numbers financial wizard. I did some interesting research on him, and he did have that exceptional skill.
Well, then let me ask you this, a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question. If he's such a financial numbers wonk, what's up with girls under 18 or 21?
What about him?
No esprio, Denise. Not cool.
Well, does it matter if you have money? Money is power, and money and power can pay off anybody.
You're right. If you have a lot of money, which gives you a lot of power, and you embrace the Democrat Party, you can do whatever you want to do. I forgot. Not my bad.
Okay.
All right. Do you mind taking a minute and strolling over to the rather strange bit of artwork that has been circulating social media with Bill Clinton in the blue dress and the red pumps?
Okay.
When I first saw that, I'm thinking, all right, this has got to be fake news.
It's not.
Wow.
It is not.
And he had this prominently displayed in the New York townhouse, right?
Correct.
What do you think Bill thought about that?
Well, it really did happen. There was an artist that actually did paint it, and that would tend to show you how I don't know, depraved that these people really are. It really is a painting, and it really was painted by an Australian artist by the name of Patrina Ryan Clyde, Kleid.
Well, let me ask you this. As much as I despise Bill Clinton, tell me that he didn't pose for it.
Oh, I don't think he would have to pose for it. I just think they just painted his face on you know.
Yeah, that's what I figured they did. Do we have any idea whether Clinton was aware of this painting?
Yeah, like, hey, dude, you're not going to believe what I bought and paid for that's hanging over here. Come on over and take a look. Now, understand, too, that this woman, this Australian artist, also painted I guess, a caricature, which is what the Bill Clinton painting was. But she painted one of Bush 43 in 2012. And he is sitting on the floor of the Oval Office in front of his desk with building blocks on the floor and paper airplanes. And she's calling it War Games of 2012. So, yeah.
So clearly she does satirical painting.
Correct. But in the case of Bill Clinton, it has obviously, I would say, a lot more meaning behind it than some of the other stuff that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Most of the guys that I know, well, first of all of the guys that I know would not be messing around with underage girls. But I would say that the majority of the guys that I know, if they found out that some smarmy schmuck had a painting of them hanging in his New York condo of them wearing a dress and red pumps, probably wouldn't be too happy about it.
Well, here's what's kind of interesting about the blue dress, because I think that we tend to want to refer to the blue dress as Monica Lewinsky. But in this particular case, that's not the blue dress. The blue dress happens to be the replica of the blue dress that Hillary Clinton wore to the inaugural ball of Bill Clinton.
Oh, really?
So it's a Hillary dress and not a Monica dress.
When was this painting painted?
Ooh, I don't know that we know that, but it had actually been hanging in his New York residence since at least 2012.
Sick, twisted minds.
Hey.
Sick. All right. Well, listen, I think unless there's something else about Epstein and his weirdness that you want to talk about.
No, I'm good.
We got about 13 minutes left until we have to say goodbye to our beloved listeners. Can we go over to Hong Kong?
Well, we could, but I think that we ought to talk about Tlaib and Omar.
All right, let's do it.
Well, they made a press conference today after we had all this brouhaha about they being denied entry into Israel. And then Talib writes this passionate letter. I won't do this. I won't do that. I want to come visit my mother, blah, 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 blah. And they went, okay, on the grounds of humanitarian conditions, we will allow you to come visit. And then what does she do? She went, never mind, just kidding. So today, Talib and Omar gave a press conference along with a couple other Islamists, and they had still nothing nice to say about Israel. And they continue to talk about being occupiers and having to go through Palestinian checkpoints and, all these other kinds of things. Well, let's not forget that the reason Israel does these things is because of terrorists. And we have this cockamamie organization from the United Nations called UNRWA, which is dedicated only to Palestinians, I might add. And they continued on the attack of Israel to the point where they both said they're on these committees and they don't believe that they want to continue to give monies, the United States to continue to give monies to Israel because this is how they treat two members of Congress. Well,
can I stop you there and ask you two very pointed questions?
Yeah.
That I know the answers to, but I want to drive this point home. Fact or fiction? Israeli hospitals probably right this minute are saving the lives of Palestinians.
Fact.
Okay. Fact or fiction? Palestinian hospitals right this moment are saving the lives of Israelis.
Fiction.
That's really the point I wanted to drive home.
Well,
Let's not forget that, ladies and gentlemen, while we're having this discussion about the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Well, let's also understand, too, that the travel request was as a result of these two congresswomen choosing not to go on the bipartisan congressional delegation visit to Israel only a week before. They could have gone on that. And their request was for Talib and Omar to visit, was not to visit Israel. It wasn't to, have legitimate discussions with any Israeli leadership. It was to visit Palestine. Palestine exists in imaginations. It's not a real, it was a concocted thing that everybody's just come to refer to. But the majority of Palestine, if you will, if you want to talk about Palestinian territory, the majority of it lies in what country?
Israel.
Jordan.
Oh, really?
So why don't they go visit Jordan? If they want to go visit Palestine, go visit Jordan. That's why Jordan is always involved when we get into any of these conflicts between East Jerusalem, West Bank, all those other kind of stuff, is because the kingdom of Jordan is the designated manager of this. Now,
all right, hold on, stop, because I said Israel. Am I completely wrong?
No, I mean, there are parts of Israel that they...
Okay. All right.
But the majority of land mass is in Jordan.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now, they filled out an itinerary of where they're going to go and who they're going to meet with. And what they actually said today in their press briefing was completely false. They said they were going to meet with members of the Knesset. That's false. So... and they want a single state solution. And I would argue today that we already have a 3-state condition. Now, let's not forget how many years ago it was, just not 20 to 30 years ago, maybe. Israel completely uprooted Israelis in what is known as Gaza. Gave it up, gave this territory completely up, and handed it over to whoever wanted it. Here, we will pay to move all Israelis out of here. We'll move them back into Israeli territory proper. And Gaza, you do what you want. And then over time, so now you have a 2-state solution. You got a 2-state condition. Then you got the whole part of the West Bank, which has always been contested, and there are pockets of nothing but Palestinians there. And then you've got the Golan Heights. So it's almost like they're in a 4-state condition, aren't they? And yet little Miss Omar is calling for continued sanctions to stop any kind of construction, what they're calling settlements, which annoys me. Settlements. These are neighborhoods. These are, developers building little, neighborhoods of condos and duplexes and whatnot. And we still have this whole thing of boycott, divest, and sanction, BDS. So everything that they said today in their press conference was false. I would also add that the trip was designed, funded, and planned by a terror group by the name of MIFTA. And MIFTA has been accusing Israel of apartheid for God knows how long. And they didn't happen to mention MIFTA. So, in fact, this UNRWA thing, which is the single dedicated department of the United Nations, is so corrupt that you've got a handful of countries that have quit funding them, including the United States. So, yeah. Now, I would say Nancy Pelosi's got a new problem on her hands, and I don't know how she's going to handle it. Who's she going to side with here in this thing? She knows about the MIFTA. She knows about the itinerary. She knows about BDS. So where is she?
She knows they lied today.
Well, sure. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens next.
Let me ask you a question about an elected official, a congresswoman, lying on paper about why they're planning to go to a foreign country. Is there anything illegal about that?
I think you could probably make the case for that, but then what happens? Well, you go to the ethics committee. And then when you go to the House Ethics Committee, they do, a 10-minute look and they go, nah, we don't see any reason to censor or sanction or discipline, because the House Ethics Committee, just as this, yeah, there's nothing to it. There's no consequence.
So we got to count on the American voter.
Yeah.
Got to count on you people.
Yeah, well, I don't put a lot of faith in them either because they don't do their homework.
Yeah. All right, we got like 3 minutes left. You got to go over to Hong Kong. What happened with
this
Taiwan?
past weekend?
What happened with Taiwan?
Taiwan, well, we're giving Taiwan, we're selling Taiwan a bunch of military stuff, and that has really made China mad. But China is really mad anyway because of what is going on in Hong Kong. And President Xi, he's now become a tyrannical dictator for life, I might add. We tend to forget that. He cannot stand the fact that Hong Kong is really independent. And that's the reason that they proposed this extradition law, of which the Hong Kongans, if that's a word, are protesting, and they've been protesting now 8 to 10 weeks. But this past weekend, they had 1.5 million people in what it was otherwise known as a peaceful protest. They are going to continue these protests, and rightly so. So I would say that this is certainly confusing, if you will, all things with our trade deal with China. Now, another interesting notion here is that Twitter and Facebook, interestingly enough, in the last couple of days, did an operation where they shut down hundreds of accounts, hundreds. Twitter themselves, I think, was at 936 Twitter accounts that were designed by, according to Twitter in their cyber work, originating with the government of China on discrediting the Hong Kong protesters, saying that they're terrorists. Facebook got a phone call from Twitter and saying, hey, we've discovered this. You might want to take a look. So then Facebook turned around and said, oh, yeah, we see that. So they took down more than 15,000 accounts on Facebook, and one of the group accounts on Facebook had 2,000 members. So China is is doing the same thing as what? Yeah, the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg, Russia, of causing all of this nonsense. So they're trying to spread bad information, and they did. And, they do the same thing when it comes to Iran and Venezuela. So at least in this particular case, that Twitter and Facebook did the right thing.
I can tell you this, and we got 30 seconds. The Cowboy Logic website of late, and I'm talking maybe the last month, has been inundated with attempted hacking. Not from Russia, not from the Middle East, not from any place other than China. I probably see 30 attempts a day of trying to hack into that Cowboy Logic site. And we're small potatoes compared to everything else. But they're going after everybody.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Drive Time SITREP is time to bring it to a close. We sure appreciate you joining us. Hopefully you've been listening to us on one of our AM/FM stations or Mojo 50. We sure do appreciate all of our networks and our affiliates. But most importantly, we appreciate you. Denise Simon, take us home, girl.
Thanks for being with us, and God bless America.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.